You want to judge somebody, you want to find out whether they're cool or not. If they want something from you, they're going to be nice to you.
For millions, they were the perfect Hollywood couple. Their on-screen chemistry was so charming, so witty, so utterly believable that it just had to be real. Their names were Doris Day and James Garner, and their legendary connection in Beloved. Comedies sparked endless whispers of a secret romance simmering just off-screen. Everyone just assumed they were in love. But what if the truth was something else entirely? What if the secret James Garner held wasn't about a hidden love affair, but about a devastating betrayal? Years later, in a candid memoir published when he was in his 80s, Garner set the record straight, confirming a story far more shocking than any rumored romance. It was a story not of passion, but of predation. A story of staggering financial ruin orchestrated by the one man who should have been her greatest protector, Doris Day's own husband, Martin Melcher. This is the real story of a deep friendship, forged in the spotlight, and the quiet, devastating crisis that played out in the shadows. To understand the sheer gravity of James Garner's claims, you first have to understand just how big Doris Day was. In the late 1950s and early 60s, she wasn't just a star. She was arguably the star. The undisputed queen of Hollywood, a box office giant whose name on a poster was a guarantee for success. While her image was the bubbly girl next door, in reality, Doris Day was a powerhouse. According to the industry's benchmark, the Quigley poll, Day was ranked the #1 box office draw in the world in 1960, 1962, 1963, and 1964. She landed in the top 10 for a total of 10 years, a phenomenal run that proved audiences simply couldn't get enough of her. Her sophisticated romantic comedies, films like Pillow Talk and Lover Come Back, became her signature. They were light, funny, and always built around Day's flawless comedic timing and radiant charm. She was a master of her craft, able to project innocence, intelligence, and a simmering allure all at once. Into this world walked James Garner. By the early 60s, Garner was a star in his own right, having already charmed America as the clever, card-playing Brett Maverick. He was handsome in a rugged, approachable way, with a roguish grin and an easy confidence that made him the perfect match for Hollywood's leading ladies. So when he was cast opposite the reigning queen of rom-coms in 1963's The Thrill of It All, it felt like destiny. The plot was classic Day Garner material. She plays a housewife who accidentally becomes a TV commercial star, much to the annoyance of her obstetrician husband, played by Garner. But what made the film a classic was the electric chemistry between its leads. From their very first scene, it was obvious. They bantered and bickered with the comfortable rhythm of a real married couple. In his 2011 memoir, The Garner Files, James Garner reflected that the film was better than it should have been because of Doris. He famously called her the Fred Astaire of comedy, a beautiful compliment to her precision and grace. He explained that just as Astaire made his dance partners look effortless, Doris had a way of guiding a scene so naturally that all he had to do was show up, and the magic would happen. Doris Day felt that same connection. The trust between them was instant and absolute. She once said of working with him, "He's so good at what he does. I felt married." It wasn't a romantic confession, but a testament to the profound professional comfort she felt with him. With Garner, she could relax. There was no ego, just two pros who shared a similar work ethic and a wicked sense of humor. Their partnership was so successful they were immediately re-teamed for Move Over, Darling, that same year. It was on this set that an incident occurred that truly defined their real-life friendship. In a scene where Garner was supposed to be giving Day a massage, he got a little too into his role and pushed down too hard. He accidentally cracked a couple of her ribs. Garner was horrified and overwhelmed with guilt, but Doris, ever the trooper, patted his arm and told him not to worry about it, more concerned for his feelings than her own pain. The public saw sparks on screen, But behind the scenes was something quieter and in many ways much deeper, a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. Behind this perfect partnership, however, a much darker story was unfolding, dominated by one figure, Doris Day's third husband and manager, Martin Melcher. To the public, Melcher was the man who had been by her side since 1951. He adopted her son, Terry, produced her films, and handled every single contract and every single dollar. He was, for all intents and purposes, her protector. But in Hollywood circles, Melcher was seen very differently. Many viewed him as controlling, abrasive, and deeply insecure. No one felt this more strongly than James Garner. In his memoir, Garner didn't pull any punches. He called Melcher a shallow, insecure hustler, claiming that almost no one in the industry liked the man. He believed Melcher was driven by greed and was intensely jealous of his wife's talent and fame. This wasn't just hindsight. These were observations Garner made on set decades earlier. He saw how Melcher operated up close, and he didn't like it one bit. Coming from a respected peer like Garner, this assessment carried enormous weight. He saw a man who seemed far more interested in the income his wife generated than in her actual happiness. Melcher's control over Doris's career was total. He pushed her to make film after film with little rest. While many were hits, the formula eventually grew tired. The most famous example of Melcher's alleged career sabotage involves the 1967 classic, The Graduate. Director Mike Nichols wanted Doris for the iconic role of Mrs. Robinson, believing her wholesome image would create a brilliant, subversive performance. It could have redefined her career, but it never happened. Some reports claim Melcher rejected the offer on her behalf without ever telling her, worried it would tarnish the Doris Day brand he'd built and profited from. Day herself later said that she had been aware of the offer but felt the script was vulgar and offensive and turned it down personally. Whatever the truth, the incident is a symbol of the creative straitjacket she was in. James Garner saw this dynamic with growing alarm. He watched Melcher act as producer on her films and suspected he was skimming money off the top. He alleged that Melcher's main talent was taking credit for his wife's success while holding her back. She was the biggest star in the world, the engine of a massive financial machine, yet she was essentially just an employee. She would show up, deliver a brilliant performance, and hand over the paycheck for Melcher to manage. She trusted him completely, and that trust would turn out to be catastrophically misplaced. The world Martin Melcher built around Doris Day shattered on April 20th, 1968. Melcher died suddenly from a previously undiagnosed heart condition. He was only 52. Doris was devastated, retreating into a state of shock and grief over the husband she'd had for 17 years. But a second, even more horrifying shock was coming. While his mother was grieving, her son, Terry Melcher, began to suspect something was deeply wrong with their finances. He gently urged his mother to let him look at the books. Reluctantly, she agreed. What Terry uncovered was an almost unimaginable catastrophe. The fortune Doris Day assumed she had earned over 2 decades of nonstop work, estimated by the media to be around $20 million, was gone. All of it. But it was even worse than that. When the final accounting was done, Doris Day, once the world's biggest movie star, discovered she was nearly $500,000 in debt, much of it to the IRS. It was a betrayal on a staggering scale. The man she had trusted with her life had left her with less than nothing. The details that emerged were sickening. Melcher, along with their lawyer and financial advisor, Jerome Rosenthal, had squandered her entire fortune on a series of disastrously risky ventures. Speculative. Oil wells, failing hotels, and other dubious schemes, all funded with Doris Day's money. The lawyer, Rosenthal, had allegedly been commingling funds and signing her name to deals she knew nothing about, all while her fortune evaporated. For Doris, the discovery was soul-crushing. It wasn't just the money, it was the realization that Her husband was either a fool duped by a crooked lawyer or a willing participant in her ruin. The truth was likely what James Garner had seen years earlier. Melcher, the insecure hustler, had gotten in over his head. As if that weren't enough, a chilling footnote was unfolding at the very same time. Her son Terry, a successful record producer, had briefly considered signing an aspiring musician, a disturbing drifter named Charles Manson. Terry ultimately passed, but before the infamous summer of 1969, he had lived in a house on Cielo Drive. After he moved out, the house was rented to director Roman Polanski and his wife Sharon Tate. On August 9, 1969, Manson sent his followers to that exact address to commit the horrific Tate murders. While investigators never proved the attack was retaliation against Terry, Doris was terrified that her son had been the intended target. The combination of her husband's death, her financial ruin, and the terror of the Manson cult created a perfect storm of trauma. America's sweetheart was living a real-life nightmare. Faced with utter devastation, most people would have crumbled. But Doris Day was not most people. Beneath that sunny on-screen image was a core of pure steel. She wasn't about to become a victim. Instead, she fought back. In 1969, she filed a massive lawsuit against the lawyer, Jerome Rosenthal, for fraud and malpractice. It was a bold move that meant her entire life, her finances, her marriage, would be put on display for the world to see. During this grueling legal battle, which would rage for years, the warnings of her friend James Garner must have echoed in her mind. His frank assessment of Melcher now looked like a prophecy. Garner's public criticism served as a powerful validation of her story. For a star of his stature to so clearly condemn Melcher was a profound act of loyalty. He wasn't just sharing gossip. He was publicly defending his friend and confirming the truth she was now fighting to prove in court. While the lawsuit dragged on, Doris had to pay off her massive debts. And that's when another of Melcher's posthumous surprises dropped. She discovered that, without her knowledge, her late husband had signed her up for a television series. Doris was horrified. She had no desire to do TV, but the contract was ironclad, and she desperately needed the money. So in 1968, with a heavy heart, she started The Doris Day Show. The show she never wanted became her financial lifeline. For 5 seasons, she showed up and did the work, slowly but surely digging herself out of the hole Melcher had left her in. Finally, in 1974, the verdict came in. The court found overwhelmingly in her favor, ruling that Rosenthal had engaged in malpractice and fraud. The judge awarded Doris Day what was then one of the largest civil judgments in California history, approximately $22.8 million. Rosenthal was later disbarred in disgrace. While she never collected the full amount, she eventually recovered millions through settlements, enough to secure her future. But more importantly, she had won her justice. She was vindicated. Through it all, the quiet, steady friendship of people like James Garner remained a constant. Their bond, forged on a movie set in 1963, endured for the rest of their lives. It was never the romance fans hoped for. It was something rarer in Hollywood, a friendship of equals, built on deep respect and genuine warmth. Their lives went in different directions, but the connection never faded. In later years, they kept in touch by phone. His own daughter, Gigi, has said that Garner disliked talking on the phone, but he always made an exception for Doris. Their calls could reportedly last for hours, filled with laughter and memories. Many believe their shared Midwestern sensibilities were the key. Both were down-to-earth, no-nonsense professionals who saw through the phoniness of Hollywood. They were the real deal, and they recognized that in each other. Theirs was a friendship that lasted more than 50 years, a quiet testament to the real chemistry they shared, not as lovers, but as kindred spirits. In the end, the truth James Garner helped expose wasn't some juicy tabloid secret. It was far more important. It was the confirmation, from a trusted and loyal friend, of the painful reality Doris Day hid behind her radiant smile. It was the story of a catastrophic betrayal and of a woman who reached the very top of her profession only to have her security stolen by the man meant to protect her. James Garner's candid words weren't just an opinion, they were an act of loyalty. He spoke a difficult truth to defend a friend he deeply admired. And in doing so, he helped cement the true legacy of Doris Day, not just as America's sweetheart, but as a survivor of incredible strength and grace who fought for her justice and won. Their story isn't one of secret romance, but of a profound friendship that stood the test of time, trouble, and tragedy. What do you think about the incredible friendship between Doris Day and James Garner? Let us know in the comments. And for more stories about the hidden truths of Hollywood's golden age, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.